Hey Dulles, my name is Alton and it's a pleasure to welcome you today. If you are joining us from Light Ridge High School, welcome. I'm so excited to be able to see your faces. And if you're online with us right now, I'm equally as happy you've joined us. I love our church community and spending my weekends with you. We are very excited that Joshua Simonette, who is on our teaching team, will be speaking at Dulles on May 23rd. He is super excited to join us, and we love that he is a part of our church family. So be sure to save the date and join us in person or online on May 23rd. You don't want to miss it. And we don't want you to miss out on anything else happening at Dulles. So we encourage you to take a moment, fill out our digital connection card so that we can have your up-to-date contact information, including email. And don't worry, we won't spam you or sell your information. Also, we at Dulles are passionate about serving and being generous with our giving. When you give to Dulles, you are creating more room for others to experience God. So much of what we've been able to do this year with serving projects, our church online experience, and our new home at Light Ridge High School, all of that is possible because of your giving. Thank you. And you can give to Dulles at dulleschurch.org/give. I love that you are here with us today. If you're online, say hi in the chat. Thank you for listening and be well.
Okay, so before I tell my frustration and my frustration story, I was just told about 30 seconds ago I need to explain my eye. I'm not stoned. Your pastor isn't doing drugs. If you're not in the Dulles area, the springtime air in Virginia is like poison to me. And I've had a pretty rough week. So I have such bad allergies. Sometimes my eyes actually look like bloody, and I'm battling that a little bit today. So that's my disclaimer. I usually give it about once every springtime. All right, here's what is so frustrating to me. About a week and a half ago, Mackenzie and I were watching at the end of Captain America and the Winter Soldier, this epic fight that it was brutal and it was long between Captain America and the Winter Soldier. And the Winter Soldier is one of the worst villains planet Earth has ever seen or experienced in history. And we all know watching that Captain America has to defeat him, or he and the organization he fronts are going to take over the world and kill millions and millions of people. And so the world's future, like humanity, is hanging in the balance, and Captain America has to win this fight, this battle. And what was so frustrating is that just when he does, or you think he's won, and this beam from the collapsing building falls on the Winter Soldier, and Captain America obviously is going to win, and the building is starting to collapse in around him and on top of him, Captain America then, after this long, exhausting fight, goes to his rescue. He actually goes to lift this giant beam and free the Winter Soldier, this villain. And there's a big part of you just at the end of the movie like, why? You know, it's in our DNA. Whatever good and bad is to you, you want good to prevail. We all do. We want what we think is evil or bad to be defeated by good. I think that's in all of us. And so Mackenzie and I are going through the Marvel Cinematic Universe in timeline order, and we're more than halfway, and we get to this movie that I hadn't seen, actually. And it's funny because we actually watched in Washington, D.C., one of the scenes from Captain America and the Winter Soldier. We watched the motorcycle scene when he comes down the street, pulls into his house. And I had still never seen the movie until about a week and a half ago. And I'm just, with all of that, and of course we're talking about superheroes, there was a frustration in me that I think a lot of people have at the end of the movie. Why? Why would he try to rescue the evil and the bad that he's been fighting through the whole movie to defeat? Okay, so before we answer that question, I want to just go back and look at one verse from last week. In Romans chapter 3, the Apostle Paul's talking to young believers in Jesus, people who have newly converted or turned their lives over to the control and the plan and the mission of Jesus. And they're in Rome, and Paul's writing to them, and he says this, and on the surface it sounds discouraging. There's no one righteous. Righteous is God's word for good. And he's really speaking to the standard that God has for humanity. And we see it in the Garden of Eden. We see it in the creation story that men and women were very good. We were made in God's image. We talk about this a lot here at Dulles, and we did last week. And throughout the series, we were designed for good. We were designed to wholly, completely reflect the good that is God. And when we chose selfishly, it broke everything. And the selfishness is something that we can't escape. We can do good things. We can do good acts. We can be kind to a neighbor. We can be thoughtful. But at the end of the day, this default of self-serving self-elevation is what controls us. And Paul says there's no one righteous, there's no one good, there's no one who's right in God's eyes, not even one person. There's no one who does good, not even one. And again, that doesn't mean we can't do a good deed. It means there's no one who can live the good that we were designed to live, which is the whole complete reflection of God. Okay, so the question I want to ask today is why? Why would God still care about us? Or what is God's plan for us if none of us meet his standard? And if none of us can do anything? That's in large part what our series has been about, that we really can't do anything. Our instinct is to do more to please God, to do more to earn God's favor, to do more to spend eternity with God, to do good or to do better. And God just tells us there's nothing we can do to undo the brokenness or the selfishness that has covered over the whole and complete reflection of God that we are to be. So why does God care? What is God's plan if none of us meet his standard? So in part, to answer that question, I'm going to show here about a 4.5 minute piece by Andy Stanley. Andy's speaking to the church where he's a lead pastor in Atlanta, North Point Community Church. We're a partner of North Point's. And he says so well here, something that I think in part answers the question. And then after this 4 minute or more part by Andy, I'm gonna give another part of the answer to why would God care about us? Why interact with us? What is God's plan if we don't meet his standard?
At some point in your life, and I'm assuming this is true of you, it is true of me, so this isn't a you thing, this is a we thing. At some point in all of our lives, even if you're not a Christian, this isn't even a Christian thing, this is just a thing. We have all wondered at some level, why would, if there is one, why would a good God, assuming there's a good God, why would a good God allow bad things to happen? I mean, this is a universal question. All religious people of all faith backgrounds at some point intersect with this question. In fact, for some of you, it may have been this question that spelled the end of faith for you. That your faith died a slow, painful death because of this question. Or perhaps you're watching or listening at one of our churches and your faith is currently dying a slow, painful death because you just can't get resolution around this question. Now, the interesting thing about this question, and I'm not going to resolve it today, there's not enough time and I'm not smart enough, but here's something that's interesting about this to me. This question always revolves around the pain and the suffering out there, or the evil in the world out there, and never the evil in the world in here. Or let me put it a different way. Have you ever done anything bad? Do not raise your hand, right? Have you ever done anything bad? I have. But here's the thing. I've never met anyone, you may be the first one, I've never met anyone who doubted the existence of a good God based on their own badness. In other words, I've never heard this. How could a good God allow me to happen? I've never heard anyone say that. Maybe you have. Or another way of putting it is this. If God were good, if God was good, he would have done something about me by now. Right? It's always this bad. And so when you see this, I know what you think. You think what I think, even though I put it up here. It's like, okay, no, Andy, I'm talking about the really, really bad stuff. I'm not talking about the bad I do. I mean, I'm not perfect. I'm not good. And if I factor in the evil intent, if I factor in the things I would like to do, if I thought I could get by with them and not get caught, not go to prison for the rest of my life, I mean, even factoring that in, I'm not talking about my evil, my potential for evil, or my bad. I'm talking about the really, really bad stuff out there. How could there be a good God when there's all that really, really bad stuff out there? Now, just to play with you a little bit. The problem is, once you enter into that conversation, once we start talking about gradations of bad and evil or some sort of spectrum, now you're in the world of how much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood, and that's an endless question. In fact, it leads to somewhat of an unfalsifiable premise, which makes the whole idea meaningless. And I'm not being critical because we all wrestle with this. But eventually, if you wrestle with that question long enough, you end up here. I don't believe God exists because I exist. The only way a good God could prove to me that he exists is to eliminate all evil and all potential evil, including me, but then I wouldn't be around for him to prove that he exists. And it's an unfalsifiable premise. It falls apart. But it's so emotional, and it's so emotionally challenging, especially if you're facing evil or you've been the victim of evil. And to the rescue comes John. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. John who wrote the fourth gospel. John, the friend of Jesus. John who tracked around with Jesus during Jesus' entire earthly ministry. And John, I think, if he were to hear this idea or this argument for, against the existence of God, I think John would stand up and say, wait, hang on, because I saw something that might help you. I saw God in a body coexist with evil men. And he didn't prove he was God, and he didn't prove he existed or that God existed by exterminating or by eliminating evil. He did something else. Instead of eliminating me, John would say, he loved me. Instead of eliminating me because of the evil in me, John would say, he went to work eliminating the evil in me because he loved me.
Okay, such a good point by Andy. And I want to just build off of this as we're answering the question today, why would God care? Why would God intervene? Why would God come to this world? Why would he interact with us? And what is his ultimate plan for us if he says plainly through Paul that there's nothing we can do to earn our way back to good? We don't meet his standard. Okay, listen to this. Paul also writes this. So God is speaking to his church, to followers of Jesus, really to the world through the Apostle Paul. Paul says this. He goes on to say this in Ephesians. This is really interesting when you consider how Paul said to the Romans, there's no one who's good. There's no one who meets God's standard. Then he says this in Ephesians chapter 2. For it is by grace that you have been rescued by Jesus, that you've been saved through faith, meaning you've trusted what Jesus has done for you, which you couldn't do for yourself. That's what he means by faith. For it is by grace, the free gift, that you have been saved through faith. This is not from yourselves. It is a gift from God, not by works, so that no one can boast. For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. So Paul says in Romans 3, no one is good. No one can do good. No one can, on their own, be the good, be the rightness, be the whole and complete reflection of God that God designed us to be, which we clearly read about in creation, which men and women, all human beings were designed to be. None of us can undo the broken and the selfishness. Then he turns around and says, we are his handiwork. And this is the answer. This is actually the answer of why Steve Rogers, who's Captain America, at the end of this big fight with one of the world's most notorious villains, runs to his rescue. It's actually because we learn the backstory is that the person who was turned into the evil Winter Soldier was Bucky, Steve Rogers' longtime best friend. And Steve knew the good that was in him. He knew that underneath this selfishness that the Winter Soldier had become was this good person. And you know, the way I watch movies, I'm always looking, I watch for the story, of course, but I'm always looking for the metaphor or the parable that speaks to my worldview or the worldview that is the story of Jesus. I believe most great stories today borrow from the story, the greatest story. And so when Captain America is now running to rescue this person who's just lost in selfishness, It's because he knows that underneath the selfishness is his friend who is good. And that's exactly an example, a picture from fiction of what Jesus actually came to do. We are his handiwork. We are God's craftsmanship, created in Jesus to do good works. We were designed for good. We were designed to do good. We were designed to be the good of God to this world. And so Paul is telling us, no one on their own can undo the broken and the selfishness. Even though you can love a neighbor and you can stop and help someone change a tire and you can be thoughtful, there's no way of escaping what has become our nature, which is self-serving, self-elevating selfishness. But Jesus has come to do it. He has come to work in his handiwork, in his craftsmanship, you and me, the renewal, the bringing out of us what is good, the drawing out of you and me, the good that we were designed to be. Listen to this in Romans 15. If you are somebody who isn't convinced that you're good, if you're someone who, and I have these conversations with people so often who explain to me they love our church, they love the way we communicate about God, they've actually read the story of Jesus, maybe for the first time in their life, they find him incredibly compelling, but the problem, Brad, is, and they'll speak to something of their past or something that they haven't escaped, something of guilt or a regret or a relationship that they broke. And if you know, with this large of an audience that watches online and with us at Lightridge, I'm sure I'm speaking to some right now who consider themselves in some way not worthy to walk with God or to experience God's good or to experience God's activity in their life or to have assurance that they are connected to God. I want to just read this also from the Apostle Paul. This is later in the book of Romans. Paul says, I myself am convinced. I'm convinced. He's writing to these young followers of Jesus who earlier he was confronting in chapter 3. There's no one good. There's no one righteous. He's confronting them in chapter 3 about their egotistical view that Gentiles can't be favored by God. Gentiles, those who are non-Jews, can't experience the love of God. They've been rejected by God is their thought. And Paul is calling out of them their hypocrisy. No, actually, there's no one good, not even you, he says to the Jewish believers, the Jewish followers of Jesus. No one, by their own merit or their own work, can earn their way back to God or can undo the brokenness. Well, now, by the end of the book of Romans in chapter 15, Paul says to that same group of people, I myself am convinced that you yourselves are full of goodness. Paul is speaking to people who are being changed from the inside out by the good that is Jesus. Jesus is renewing and recreating his good in us when we in faith choose to follow him. We choose to trust that he came to take all of our selfishness and all the guilt and regrets on the cross to free us. In God's justice system, God was dealing with our brokenness, our selfish choosing when Jesus went to the cross. So in faith, when we choose to follow him and say, I can't make myself good, but Jesus can return me to good. Jesus can draw the good I was designed for out of me. Jesus can renew in me his good. Paul is saying, and I see the goodness in you. And I just want to say that to every one of you. We all have flaws and scars and mistakes and regrets, all of us. I do. Amy and I, we speak often about early in our marriage, regrets that we have. We don't do that to always be looking back in the past. We speak to it to speak to the renewal, the new that we have personally experienced in our relationship and in our minds and hearts that Jesus has worked in us. All of us have regrets. All of us have these moments in the distant past, or maybe not so distant past. And I'm just here to tell you that Jesus sees the good that you were made to be, and he is the one who's come to draw that good out of you. Before we close here, I just want to say Jesus didn't come to try to convince you to do more good, to do more good things. He didn't come to try to convince you to act like someone that you're not. That's in large part what I think religion is guilty of. Jesus came to restore and bring the life, the good that you were made to be back to reality, back to your reality. Jesus came to renew the goodness that you were designed to do and to be. Romans 8:28. Here's another thing that Paul says, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, those who trust Jesus to be the restorer, the renewer, the one who actually defines our good and makes us good and places his good in us. God will work all things, all the bad, even the hurtful moments, the regrets. He will work in the ugly to actually draw beauty out of you and me. Titus, I mean, we could stand here all day, and I am going to wrap this up, but here's another example that I just want to leave you with, and jot these down if you want to rewatch this today and reread these scriptures this week as promise and what fills our hearts and minds with the hope of Jesus. This is trustworthy, Paul says to Titus, so that those who've devoted themselves to God will be careful to do what is good. God designed you and me to live out good, his good, the reflection of his creativity, his life, his forgiveness, his mercy, his love. And so when Jesus begins this work of restoring and renewing the good in us, we are going to live out lives of good. So I just want to take us back to week one. In week one, I talked about the bad question, the question that so many religious people and so many people around the world who are trying to be right with God, or they want God's confidence that they are going to heaven, or that they can be loved by God. They ask the question, what do I need to do? What must I do to convince God to love me, or to favor me, or to assure me? That's the wrong question. What must I do? What else can I do? That's what the rich young ruler asked. That's what several examples of people in Scripture asked Jesus. What is it more that I need to do? I'm following all the commands. It's the wrong question. The right question is, what has God done? What has God done that motivates me to serve and live out the good of his plan in this world? And of course, the answer is he sent his son Jesus to restore and renew us back to the good that we were always intended to be from the beginning. Here's what I want to leave you with today. I want to just challenge you to pray a simple but profound prayer. And then I'm going to ask you to look up a song this week. I thought I'd share this with a QR code or something. That may be more complicated than just having you search for the song title. First of all, I'm going to just challenge you to pray this prayer with me. It's really this simple. I wanted to look at my notes because it's one line, and I journaled about this, and I really felt this was the prayer to lead everybody in. God, restore and renew your good in me. God, restore and renew your good in me. Jesus, the good, the whole that you are, what no man or woman has ever been able to do to live out the whole complete reflection of God, you did. And now you offer your life to me. Restore and renew your good in me. That's our prayer, God. And now I'm just going to give you the song. It's encourage you to look up the song this week. And I want to ask you to listen to it at least twice. And maybe let me know what you think, or if you have any just thoughts or questions. It's the song called Fountain. The title of the song is Fountain by MSC. MSC is short for Mosaic. Mosaic, they're our friends out in Los Angeles, a fantastic church, and their band and music inspires a lot of what we do. And they wrote a song about 1.5 years, 2 years ago called Fountain that has everything to do with what we've talked about today. And just in your own reflective time with God this week, in the car or before you start your day, make this a part of your God time, listening to the song Fountain by MSC. Okay, I love you guys so much. I'm excited about what God's doing in our church, new people I've been meeting. Every week at Light Ridge, I see somebody new that I haven't, or somebody brand new and people that I haven't met before who've just joined us. We're really, really happy to have each and every one of you. Don't forget to influence, to let the good of God really permeate out of you to others. And some of that just plays out by inviting someone to watch along with you online or to join us at Light Ridge. For those of you around the country and really in different parts of the world, we happen to know, that watch along with us. We love you. We love that you're a part of the Dulles family with us. Have a great week, everybody.